get to the public comment portion, I'll ask if that person or if anybody else who might call in wants to provide comment. But we have a member of the public in the room who has declined to, who just not have an interest in providing public comment.
Okay.
We're all set when you want.
I'm ready. We good?
Yep. Good to go.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 11th, 2026 meeting of the Seattle Planning Commission. Before we go any further, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. As we begin our meeting, we respectfully acknowledge that our meeting today is taking place on occupied Coast Salish land. We pay respect to the Coast Salish elders, past and present, and extend that respect to their descendants and to all Indigenous people. To acknowledge this land is to recognize the history of physical and cultural genocide and settler colonialism, which continues to displace Indigenous people today. It is also to recognize these lands, waters, and their significance for the resilience and wise peoples who continue to thrive in this region despite the consequences of displacement and broken treaties. Those who hold settler privilege in this city must work towards supporting the Coast Salish people and all Indigenous people using the various forms of wealth and privilege that we reap due to it. My name is Matt Hutchins. I use he, him pronouns. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Seattle Planning Commission, along with Zio Alvarez. All right. To the members of the public, welcome. We're happy to make all commission meetings open to the public. Please note that the Planning Commission does not hold public hearings per se, since the commission is an advisory body. We provide recommendations to elected leaders who in turn are tasked with the actual decisions. We encourage individuals and organizations to provide their comments appropriately to elected officials. This meeting is a hybrid meeting with some of you in the Boards and Commissions room at Seattle City Hall and some participating via MS Teams. I'd like to take this time to invite a commissioner to choose and briefly speak on one of the color-brave space norms that they feel has a particular relevance to today's agenda. Or I'm gonna have to call on somebody. Okay, no one is really forthcoming today, so I'm gonna jump in and use the keep focused on our collective goal and creating racial justice through Black liberation and Native sovereignty. Because we're talking about essentially, I think, a new tool in our toolbox to generate affordable housing in our city. I think one of our collective goals of the Planning Commission is to maintain access for affordable housing for the majority of the people that live in our city. And I think that that's especially appropriate to today's topic. Let's see. Is there anyone who has an amendment or modification that they'd like to suggest to our color brave space norms? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to suggest that we agree to these norms. Okay, we're going to do a round of introductions. Let's see, name, pronouns, neighborhood, and your day job. As I said, I'm Matt Hutchins. I use he, him pronouns. I am a proud West Seattleite and architect. Zio, you want to go next?
Sure. Zio Alvarez, she, they pronouns. I live in White Center, Highland Park. And for my day job, I'm an architect and urban designer at Element Architects in downtown Seattle. Rebecca?
Hi, Rebecca Brune, she, her pronouns. It's my last full commission meeting as a resident of Crown Hill. Next meeting, I'll be a resident of Wedgwood. Cool, excited up. My day job is working on transit-oriented development at Sound Transit. Michaela?
Sure, Michaela Daffern, she, her pronouns. I live in Capitol Hill, and for my day job, I work in affordable housing policy and planning for King County. And
Andy Dannenberg, he, him, live in Northeast Seattle, and I teach at the University of Washington in public health and urban planning. Let's see, Nick.
Hey everyone, Nick Whipple. I use he, him pronouns. I live in West Seattle in the North Delridge neighborhood, and for my day job, I'm a planner on the east side. How about Margaret?
Hi, I'm Margaret Zealous. I use she, her pronouns. I was recently graduated law school and will be going into land use law after I've passed the bar later in the summer. But I live in the Ballard Fremont area, and I believe Cecilia, could you go?
Oops. Hey, congratulations on graduating law school. My name's Cecilia. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Capitol Hill, and for my day job, I am an ADA coordinator at King County, and I will turn over to Rose.
Hey, I'm Rose Lucello. It's in pronouns they, them. I'm based up north in Licton Springs, Northgate transition area, and I'm a professional wetland scientist at Jacobs for my day job. Sorry I joined late, so I'm not sure if there's anyone else left.
I think Dylan.
we'll-
Hey guys, Dylan Wosecki. I use he, him pronouns. I live in the Central District, and I'm an architect and urban designer at Perkins Eastman for my day job. And hand it off to, do we get everybody? Hand it off to staff?
Hand off to staff. Robin.
Robin Vogel, I live on Vashon Island. I use she, they pronouns, and I am staff to the commission. Olivia.
Hi everyone, Olivia Baker, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also staff to the commission. John?
Hi everyone, I'm John Hoy. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm staff to the planning commission.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vanessa Murdoch. I too am staff to the Planning Commission, and I use she, her pronouns, and I welcome you all. Thank you for joining us on this gorgeous day. Back to Matt.
All right, great. Let's see. So on our agenda today, we have two items. We will be briefed by the Seattle Social Housing Developer on the work that new agency is undertaking, and then we'll have a working session on the future independent work of the commission. Before we get to that, we need to approve the May 14th, 2026 minutes. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Nick moves to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Nick. Do I have a second?
Andy gives a second.
All right, thank you. Are there any changes or amendments? Okay. Hearing none, let's call for a vote. So all in favor of approving the May 14th, 2026 minutes, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Any abstentions? Okay. Motion passes. All right. Upcoming commission meetings. Our next Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 18th from 7:30 to 9 a.m. Online via the Teams platform. And our next full commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 25th from 7:30 to 9 a.m. All right, Vanessa, you've got some announcements.
Thank you, Matt. As noted before, this is a hybrid meeting. We have several commissioners participating here in the boards and commissions room at Seattle City Hall, and others joining via the Teams platform. During the meeting, there will be opportunities for commissioners to add comments, start the discussion, add to the discussion, please use the chat function of MS Teams in order to be recognized to speak. I will assist Matt in monitoring that. Even commissioners in the room, please use chat, and I'll just keep an eye on Andy in case if you put your hand up. I do want to touch on the fact that we are coming up to a significant transition moment on the commission. Matt and Radhika will be ending their full second term at the end of this month. And as such, we will be engaging in leadership elections. So leadership of the Planning Commission is done. The votes are taken by this body. So I will be sending out a detailed email to you all tomorrow, and will ask for you to nominate co-chairs of the commission, co-chairs of the committees, and get those nominations back to me by next Wednesday, as our next full commission meeting on the 25th of June will be when we take a vote on the leadership slate. And that will be Matt's last full commission meeting. So keep an eye out for that email. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email or call me. On to public comment. We have a couple of different ways to take public comment, which we welcome and heartily enjoy. Members of the public can email me in advance of the meeting, and I will read public comment aloud. Members of the public can show up and join us here in the boards and commissions room. And the third option is to raise your hand in the Teams platform. I see we have 2 members of the public joining us. I do not see any people calling in. So I will just leave it a moment for the 2 members of the public joining us remotely to raise their hand if they care to offer public comment. I am not seeing any hands go up, so I will hand it back to Matt to introduce our guest speaker today.
Great, thank you. All right, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Mike Eliason. He's the Director of Design and Policy for the Seattle Social Housing Developer, and he's kindly joining us today to provide an overview of the work of this brand new agency, or not brand new, but as a reminder, the Seattle Social Housing Developer is not a city department, but rather a public development authority created in 2023. Quoting from their website, our mission is to develop, own, lease, and maintain mixed income housing that is permanently affordable, owned as a public asset forever, and designed for people priced out of market rate housing. While the work of the social housing developer is beyond the purview of the Seattle Planning Commission, we have invited Mike here today to provide an overview of the work of his agency as one of the many tools to address Seattle's housing affordability crisis. And we have an hour for this item. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me. Let's see if I can share my slides.
Great, we see them.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Mike Eliason, he, him pronouns, as Matt said, Director of Design and Policy for Seattle Social Housing Developer. I'm an architect and author by trade, and I was a founding member of the social housing, founding board member of the social housing PDA, and am currently on staff. So we were founded in 2023 by a vote. That was the Initiative 135. From that, we had a 13-member board that went on to select a CEO and start the process of starting to, found this organization that would become the developer itself. As Matt said, our mission is basically building stable communities where people can live in affordable housing in perpetuity. We view public housing as a public good. It's going to be held in our hands, in public hands in perpetuity, managed by us in perpetuity. We are a cost-based rent model, so we're not affordable homeownership, although there are opportunities for that potentially down the line. But the big aspect of what we're doing is that we're removed from the profit motive of the market. Our housing is free from market speculation. Like I said, we view housing as a public good. We have cross-subsidized rents both within our building and within our organization, so within separate buildings as well. We'll be serving tenant incomes from 0 to up to and over 120 AMI. For the climate folks in the building, we do have a passive house mandate. This is a climate forward way of building, kind of a whole building system that'll protect residents from the effects of climate change, energy inflation, air and noise pollution, and all of those things that we don't want our residents to be exposed to on a daily basis. Last February, Prop 1A, the funding tax, the social housing tax, became our initial funding source for starting to develop these programs. Some of you may remember we got about $135 million for all of 2025, and we're starting to get our 2026 dollars as well. And I want to kind of position where we are in kind of like the national movement. There are many cities and some states that are currently working on social housing programs. Honolulu, Hawaii, California, Chicago, Atlanta, Nashville, New York State, and Montgomery County, Maryland as well. So we're kind of in the middle of all of these, but I think we're in a position to do a lot of really interesting work around this. Our organization has changed dramatically since July. We had a change in leadership at the CEO level. Tiffany McCoy is now our interim CEO. We are in the process of filling out C-suite, CFO, COO is being onboarded. Ginger Siegel is our Chief Real Estate Development Officer. We have comm staff, and then we are onboarding a bunch of housing developers as we get moving on the construction side of things as well. We also have James Baton, who is formerly at Seattle Housing Authority, as our Director of Acquisitions. Earlier this year, we gave a presentation for Seattle Council, kind of laying out what we anticipate our development goals over the next couple of years. It takes a while to build new housing here in the city of Seattle, and it took a while to get our funding going. And so our approach is going to be this hybrid, primarily acquisitions the first couple of years. Concurrent with that, we are starting the design process, and then we will start the entitlement process, and then the development project of new constructions. Once we start building more housing, the acquisitions will come down pretty dramatically. The idea is that we'll have this large base and this experience of being a rental agency of sorts by the time we start onboarding new construction for residents. We're aiming to hit about 1,800 units in the next 5 years, subject to change in either direction, depending on kind of where our finances currently are. You may have heard we're finalizing the purchase of our first property. This is Alara at the Market, 2 blocks up from Pike Place Market. Really nice building, 150 units. We're going to start backfilling the empty units, and as units turn over with residents in the 0 to 30 and then 30 to 50 AMI income. Super excited about this project. We probably toured 20 to 30, and this one had a lot of benefits that others do not. And we're excited to have this as our flagship as we start to move on from there. The issue of design, public health, quality of life, I think are paramount to what we're doing. Public health and passive house go hand in hand, as well as climate adaptation. Quality of life, I think, is paramount in social housing. Should be paramount in all housing, but for some reason it's not in much of the US. And the design portion is really important as well. When we look to social housing movements in other countries, design plays a pretty critical role in ensuring a high building quality and high quality of life as well. So I kind of want to ground this by noting that this building doesn't exist outside of the US or Canada. The way that we develop housing in the US, we'll have this big, massive block. We'll modulate the facade to make it look like smaller buildings, like you would find in other countries. We'll introduce or mandate just a plethora of materials that are just completely divorced from having any kind of synthesis whatsoever. Our development induces a majority of units that are primarily studios and 1-bedrooms. It's really difficult to get larger family-sized units in buildings like this. And when you do, it's also difficult to have those with like a higher quality of life. These are massive buildings that end up being really expensive to finance and build as well. These tend to have really flat facades and planes, which aren't great from a building durability quality standpoint. And there's not much solar protection in the way we do housing in the US. I previously worked in Germany. We had numerous options for active or fixed solar protection on the exterior of a building. And thinking about climate change and privacy, I think these are things that we should probably start thinking about. Status quo development in the US, Seattle as well, is a double loaded corridor. This is basically like living in a hotel. You've got a corridor down the middle and units on either side. It's incredibly efficient, but like I said, it's going to primarily result in small units. You do not have the opportunity for cross ventilation. If your unit is on a polluted arterial, where we tend to focus most of our housing, you don't really get to open your window much. You have air and noise pollution to deal with. If you're facing south or west and we don't have any exterior solar protection, a lot of our older apartments don't have air conditioning as well, right? It's a pretty brutal way to think about living, right? It's not the kind of place where you're going to want to reside in perpetuity for a long time. And also, I think in the city of Seattle, we're starting to see the kind of the limits of what our building code allows with relation to this. Just incredibly dense. Much of the lot is just completely consumed by buildings, 50-foot dead-end corridors, things that you would just never see in other countries. And I think that it kind of compromises the quality of life for residents, especially when these start developing kind of in infill lots and more of the city. And so it kind of becomes this fundamental question for me. Are we building housing? Are we building hotels? Does it really matter? Well, if we're trying to develop places where people would like to remain long term, I think that, how we design our housing has a pretty significant effect. The status quo of apartments in Seattle, deep, dark, windows only on one side, it's kind of this global anomaly. It doesn't really exist outside of the US and Canada, especially once you start getting into family housing. And it's wildly different from the status quo of other countries. This is a mass timber cooperative in Switzerland that just offers more privacy, more daylight, and a much higher quality of life than almost any apartment you would find in the US. The way that other countries are able to do this is through the point access block, the single stair building. This is something that we would like to lean into for smaller buildings under 6 stories. It's a relatively not common. It's been allowed in Seattle for about 50 years. When it was first allowed, there was no height limit. Now there's a 6-story height limit. Basically, you have a small number of units around a central core, elevator, stair core. You have the opportunity for family-sized units. You're limited to 4 units per floor. This kind of induces Gesundheit, larger units. You can have cross ventilation. You can have your bedrooms on the quiet side of a building, right? So it's fundamentally a very different way of living, both in a building and in the neighborhood. And one of the things that I really, really like about this approach, right? These buildings end up being significantly thinner than what we typically see in Seattle. And so what that means is that we have more space for green. We have more space for community. Trees have become the hot topic of debate around development in Seattle. And this isn't really an issue in other countries because this is how they develop. They have both housing and trees. The passive house standard is a mandate for us. We're going to be doing this for all new construction. We'll have the opportunity to potentially rehab existing buildings that we acquire as well. There are a number of reasons that we ended up with passive house as our default standard. A big one is just in terms of climate adaptation and protecting our residents. There's really no other standard that comes close. You've got an airtight building. It's got super insulated, so it's protected from heat, it's protected from cold snaps. We have a centralized ventilation system or semi-centralized ventilation system providing continuous fresh filtered air. It's protection against wildfire smoke, protection against noise pollution, air pollution, and these buildings don't have spiders. As a guy who lives in an old ADU, we have lots and lots of spiders, and so it's an aspect of this that I find really, really exciting. I'll also note that in social housing in other countries like the UK, passive house social housing is noted for having a reduction in cases of asthma and other illnesses because of the better quality of living for residents. I'm also on the policy side of things, so I'll note a couple of policy wins that we've been working on or working towards over the last couple of years. Last year, thanks to Representative Reed, the SSHD was added to the Housing Cooperation Act for Washington State. This is a really interesting law that allows us to get relief from building and zoning codes. It allows us easier transfer of lands from public agencies if they would like to sell, dedicate, or just hand them over to us. It allows for aid and cooperation in utilities and parks and streets and alleys and community spaces for specific sites. We're just learning more about this as we get into it, but basically it's an agreement between SSHD and the city. It does require council action. One of the things that we're kind of really intrigued about this is that it allows us to deliver potentially more development capacity while reducing our development costs, allowing us to give or reach deeper levels of affordability, and also allow us to preserve more open space, trees, space for nature, and all of those good things. Another really good one is the smaller elevators and single stair buildings. So I don't know how aware this commission is with the cost of elevators in the US. Much as with infrastructure, the cost of elevators is significantly higher than other places, 3 to 5 times higher in the US than in Switzerland. This is for a whole number of reasons, but the gist of it is that we don't see as many elevators in buildings because of this. We're going to be buying a lot of elevators as the social housing developer, and so more affordable elevators in smaller buildings is a way for us to both provide more accessible homes and also save money potentially in the process of doing it. Another really fascinating bill, which is, I guess, starting to be adopted, incorporated into OPCD legislation for the zoning code, HB 1183, facade modulation and upper level setbacks have been removed for affordable housing, mass timber buildings, and passive house buildings. So we are definitely going to be leaning heavily into that. Next steps for our new construction. We're currently looking at several projects around the city. Our goal is to be in every district. We don't want to be concentrated in any one neighborhood. We're going to be spread out around the city. And so we're kind of looking all over the place right now. Like I said, our first project was in D7. That's the Alara in Belltown near Pike Place Market. Earlier this year, we published an RFQ for on-call design rosters. We had 2 of them actually, one for small to medium-sized projects. It's going to be buildings that are under 40 units. Another one for large projects that's greater than 40 units. From that, we have selected a roster, so 5 firms from the small and medium-sized projects, 6 for the large, that we'll be able to go to when we have land under control to start the design and construction process on those. We are currently working on the master service agreements for those. Currently also designing or writing our design standards for our buildings so that once we get those underway, we can quickly get these to our consultants so that they can get to work and help us deliver hopefully better buildings more quickly. We're currently working on purchase and sale agreements for 3 separate sites. We're still touring sites in North Seattle. The land issue has been kind of a fun one for us as we try to find places that we can develop. Our goal is basically to start 2 to 4 projects this year, another 2 to 4 projects next year, and another 2 to 4 projects after that. That number goes up and down based on the size of the project. So if we're doing smaller buildings, we could do more. If we're doing larger buildings, we do less. But the idea is that we'll be consistently developing housing over the next decade or more. We also passed, the board passed our new construction values. So these are some of the things that we wanted to lean into as we start to write our design standards and think about how our buildings kind of integrate into the Seattle landscape. A big one for us was thinner buildings, but taller buildings to allow more open and green space, right? We're trying to get that good balance of open space and density that, frankly, I would say is lacking in much of the city today. I really miss having daylit kitchens. It's something that I don't think we have enough of in the US. As someone who cooks for a family of 4, like not having a thing to look out when I'm cooking would just drive me insane. We're going to be leaning a lot more into unit diversity. We're going to be seeing more 2, 3, 4 bedrooms and opportunities for more innovative forms of dwelling collectively that probably haven't been seen in the US. We have had some experiments with co-living, but I want to see if we can push that even further. We are primarily going to serve family-sized homes. So we're aiming for about 50% of our units in our buildings to serve 2 or more bedrooms. In the future, I'm hoping that we're able to coordinate with Seattle Parks and Rec, Seattle Public Schools on the sightings of these projects so that planning for parks, playgrounds, capital investment or closures of schools, enrollment planning, where investments for community centers or libraries are all going, right? So that all of those can be dovetailed and kind of coordinated at a much greater rate. Probably unfamiliar to anyone at this commission, parking has been our most debated topic, both on the staff level and at the board level. We've kind of set a flexible parameter. We're aiming for roughly 5 parking spaces per unit, or we're calling it 1 parking space per family-sized unit, with the ability to reduce that further near high-capacity transit stations, on the frequent transit network, near bike infrastructure, or within urban villages and neighborhood centers. And I was asked to comment a little bit on current barriers for SSHD. I will note that the big one right now, zoning constraints are a significant one. We tend to really only allow dense affordable housing on truck streets, arterials, and things of that nature. And our board and our staff have been pretty adamant that these are not the locations where we want people to be living. We want them to live near them, but this is not the kind of road where we see families wanting to raise children. So allowing 4 to 6 story buildings, at least 3 to 5 blocks off of arterials would be great. This is a old and new filter system for a passive house project in Seattle that's kind of right over here in Othello. This is a block off of MLK, block and a half. The new filter is white. The old filter is dirty over here on the right. This is only like 20 days old. The pollution from this neighborhood is so bad that without this, the residents would be inhaling this constantly in their units. So where housing goes and what our roads look like make a big kind of influence, have a big influence on the public health and quality of life for our residents. So allowing that density to creep off of the arterial allows for more opportunities for what we're trying to do. I would love for the city of Seattle to kind of push a little bit and join the rest of the world for taller single-stair buildings. It'll allow us to get much more density and also allow us to kind of offset the cost of our elevators a little bit more. Currently in the city of Seattle, the zoning to height, or the height to far ratio is really awkward, and it kind of induces these big, massive buildings with walls along interior lot lines. This is, again, something you wouldn't see in most other countries, because when the lot adjacent to this gets developed, well, it's just a mirror of the same thing, and you go from having 50 units on one side of the building, just looking at 50 units in another building. It's not a great way of living for residents. A big one that we're kind of getting our heads around as well is neighborhood opposition to height. I feel like this has changed a lot in the 20 years that I've lived in Seattle, right? We're not talking about like 3 or 4 story buildings in the middle of urban villages anymore, but I think there's still going to be a fair amount of opposition to height in places outside of those urban villages, which, again, near schools, near parks are going to be a lot of the places that we would like to develop. Another barrier that we foresee is permitting timelines. It's kind of absurd that it takes as long as it does to develop a project in the city of Seattle today, even without design review. The time it takes to get a project through entitlements, permit is just, it's really high. And so there needs to be, I think, a much larger effort to reduce this number dramatically. It sort of went down after COVID, and it's kind of been up again. And with new construction waning at the city, the staff is going to get reduced at SDCI, and that's going to have, again, ongoing effects as permits try to get pushed through in a timely manner. Another interesting one that I didn't really anticipate, but has definitely become an issue for us. We assumed that there would be a lot more public land that we would be able to utilize or purchase for development. There really isn't that much. There's a ton of public land in the city. What's fascinating is that a lot of it just isn't available for social housing or even affordable housing. There are little pockets here and there. And so this issue of like how we better use public land, whether that's social housing on top of libraries or post offices, I think becomes like the next thing that we probably focus on this. I will note that in New York City under Mamdani, they just announced yesterday a new library with housing that will be going over it as well. So we're kind of right in the middle of all of these wonderful cities that are starting to finally do really wonderful things around housing again. And so we're really excited to be, a big player in this moving forward. And so that's kind of the summary of where we are today. I wanted to leave more time because I figured there'd be a lot more questions. And so any questions that you guys have, I would be happy to answer.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Let's see. Vanessa, can you help me with the queue?
Yes, Andy has his hand raised.
Okay.
Two questions. One is, I didn't hear priority for who gets them. Will it be a lottery, or how are you choosing who gets the units as they become available?
So we will be doing a lottery is our current process. We're still kind of finalizing our policies around this. For the Alara, we did a lottery. It's likely that we'll do a lottery per building. Some other jurisdictions do this as well. We're aiming currently for buckets, and so we will have roughly 10% from 0 to 30, 30% of units from 30 to 50, 30% of units from 50 to 80, and then another 30% above that. So the idea is that we're not deeply affordable housing, we're not permanent supportive housing, we're solidly middle class housing, and we're spreading above and below that to get, through the cross subsidy to allow a broader mix of residents in the building.
And one other question, it's a little bit political, but has big business been okay with, it sounds like most of the money's coming from larger employers. Are they okay with it, or fighting, or how is that going?
I haven't really been party to any conversations around this. There is concern that our tax will get modified by the council at a future date. For now, it's what we're relying on to finance our first projects, and it's hopefully something that we are able to utilize for a long time. The city of Vienna gets about $600 million a year for their social housing, $700 million a year. And that basically comes through a 1% income tax that's actually across the board. And they also have access to low interest loans and other things that they're able to utilize to fund their housing. But it's this broad tax that's been utilized on and off for almost 100 years that's allowed them to get to the point where I think it's like 40% of their homes are owned by social housing providers.
Okay, thank you.
Vanessa?
Oh, sorry, I texted you. So Rebecca.
I see it.
And then Michaela. Too many devices.
Well, I have a lot of questions, so maybe I'll just ask a few and then we can move on. We can come back to me. This is really great and helpful. Thank you, Mike, for the presentation. It's great to see a bit of a proof of concept here with the Alara. I have some financing questions. I don't know if maybe, I hope you can answer them. If you can't, that's fine. I'm wondering about how these new construction projects are going to be financed, including long-term operating for the acquisitions. Is the tax revenue being allocated in a way that is towards new construction, part for long-term operations? I have another kind of related question about if you're going after public subsidy or levy funding, and if so, if those applications will be aligned with the priorities of that levy for the city. And I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, so currently what we're looking at doing is bonding off of the funds from the social housing tax to kind of grow our funding for the development of the new construction. I'm not a finance person, I'm an architect. Ginger and James at our office could get really into the weeds if you're interested in learning more, and I can get you in touch with those. For the levy and subsidy part, we are not partaking in those programs. We are viewing ourselves as being kind of outside of the traditional affordable housing realm, right? Instead of slicing up the pie, we're adding more seats to the table is how I kind of view it. And so we're just bringing an additional kind of set of tools, as Matt said.
Okay, great. Is there any discussion on, I don't know, I like the idea of adding more seats to the table rather than slicing up the pie. I like that. We're seeing a lot of the affordable housing pipeline struggle with financing, especially with long-term operating and new construction. A lot of these projects are just stalled out for lack of funding.
Yep.
It's maybe a real, pie in the sky, but is there discussion of sharing that wealth around in the city to help other projects get off the ground if they can adopt that model?
I know that there have been discussions. I'm not party to those at this time. Again, that's Ginger and Tiffany would be the ones to talk to in our office around that.
Okay, great. And my last question, and I'll let it move on, is I'm curious about if there have been, I looked through the meeting minutes for the recent recent board meetings, it seems like there was discussion on updates to the charter. I'm interested if that has happened or what the substance of that was. The original charter, I remember, was quite restrictive in terms of the AMI levels and board seats. And I'm wondering if there's been any changes to those to kind of increase some flexibility. For example, I feel like what you mentioned about the lack of public land, like the AMI bands that were in the original charter wouldn't qualify for like Sound Transit COD program, for example.
Exactly.
So has there been discussion and amendments to that charter?
Yeah, so I think it was either yesterday, sometime this week. I think it was yesterday. Council approved or adopted changes to our charter that will be heard at the full council in a couple of weeks. There are a number of changes. A lot of them are very, very minor. Like one of the things that we ended up, when the charter was written, we didn't anticipate currently the renters that make up the board were appointed by the Renters Commission. And we didn't anticipate, as soon as we got a building, that their tenure would immediately cease as they get replaced by residents within our buildings. So there are lots of like little cosmetic changes that allow, the renters that are currently serving on the commission or on the board to serve out the rest of their term. There were a couple of big changes. One of them, we could not basically utilize our buildings as collateral or land as collateral for developing a project. That ended up being pretty restrictive, and that ended up being changed. I think there were like 18 or 19 different items. I do not have that list in front of me, but I can have that sent to you if you're interested.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but the intent was that, yes, there were a lot of things that were a little bit more restrictive than we had hoped, and we were trying to just allow more flexibility in how we operate.
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
Cecilia?
Hey, Mike. I feel like I know I've talked to you about this, but I can't waste a platform to talk about accessibility. I'm just really excited to see that you guys are already on like proof of concept stages, and like so excited you have a building actually to show the public how this works. I'm disappointed that accessibility isn't part of any of the building values that you presented. And yeah, I just gonna reinforce that people with disabilities are going to be left out of social housing if we don't really think about universal design. With the building that you have right now, there is one unit I saw that's available that I'm pretty sure is an accessible unit, and that's awesome. But like people that need that unit can't just enter the lottery and I know having 10,000 people, you can't enter the lottery and expect to get housing, but it's just very restrictive. And I'm really worried that if social housing developer relies on the state and federal requirements dictating what will be accessible, that just so many people will be left out. And I know like a huge selling point of social housing is that if your income changes, you don't lose your housing or community. But if your accessibility status change or your disability status changes, like you will lose housing. And so I think that you went to the conference or looked into the conference hosted by the Kelsey, but we just like right now we have the Kelsey in for those of you who don't know is a developer, a disabled led developer in the Bay Area, and they've built I think 4 affordable housing units in different parts of the country that are all universal design, and they've created a universal design standards. And so we have models of like how this can actually work and how they can actually pencil out for affordable properties. So I will continue like advocating for hoping that universal design and stronger accessibility standards will be added to any of your new buildings that you build, because I really a huge portion of this population of our community is not going to be able to benefit from.
Yeah, so apologies, I did not get that into the slide, but we did in our new construction values have a section in there around universal design. And I know you and I have talked about this before as well. For our RFQ for the on-call roster, we asked firms to have, or at least acknowledge, understanding of the Kelsey and their inclusionary design standards. We are currently moving forward with trying to again what that balance is. And in my belief, I would like to have like a minimum standard or a minimum certification from the inclusionary zoning or the inclusionary standards from the Kelsey. And so we just have to figure out kind of where that resides. And within that, right, part of it is exceeding the minimum standards for type A, and then other units could be adaptable. So I would say that this is definitely something that we're thinking about. But to your point, probably not to the degree that we should be. And so we'll keep, thank you for keeping us honest, and we'll keep working on this. So.
Oh, cool. Oh, very exciting that you guys are putting these out in the RFQ.
Yeah,
so that's cool.
The Kelsey was as well. They reached out after it was published and were like, thank you. This is incredible. So.
Oh, awesome.
Michaela?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate the presentation. I have always full of questions like Rebecca, related to the social housing projects. I think the one that, I think you talked about it, but I didn't quite catch it. When do you think you're gonna start doing new construction versus acquisitions?
So we are currently trying to get 3 projects under control. As soon as we get them under control, we can start the design process for those. The design process and entitlement process is going to take a lot longer than we think it will. And so like delivering larger projects, we're probably looking at the end of 2027 earliest, early 2028 for construction. We are talking about leaning into missing middle, and kind of smaller projects to a much greater degree, just because the construction timeline and the entitlement timeline for those buildings will be significantly shorter. And then we're kind of spreading more projects around more of the city. So we're still trying to figure out kind of where that will pan out, but the goal is to get those going as soon as possible.
Yeah, I just know there's a lot of distressed multifamily properties out there in the market right now. And which presents an opportunity for you, and it presents an opportunity for your first building, which is exciting. How do you square the health, your desire for these buildings that promote the health for the residents, and also this desire and this acknowledgement that social housing is most successful when it's really thoughtfully and carefully designed, so it remains a space that meets residents' needs throughout different life stages? How are you applying like passive house criteria or kind of design principles to your selection of buildings that you might potentially acquire rather than build from the ground up? Like, how's that playing out?
So with the acquisitions, primarily in the first year or two, we're looking at newer buildings that don't have a ton of maintenance or rehabilitation needs that we're just not geared up to address at this stage. I think longer term, looking forward, those opportunities will definitely increase, and it's definitely, as putting on my passive house architect side, I think that's definitely something that I would like to lean into. Passive house retrofits in the U.S. are significantly harder than they are in other countries for a whole host of reasons. Our building modulation, right? Our building massing is wildly different than in other countries. The way we build is wildly different as well. The availability of products that would be utilized, components for passive house buildings in the US is a little bit less mature than it is in Europe as well, although that is thankfully starting to change. I would love to be doing passive house retrofits of projects going forward. And the standard, I think, for a lot of European social housing providers now is they're adding additions to the tops and the sides of their social housing projects. They're completely revamping the fabric and the mechanical systems as well, drastically reducing the emissions from the operations in the building, as well as improving quality of life and the public health outcomes for their residents. And so our goal is, down the line, we're doing all of these things, right? We're doing rehabs and retrofits on acquisitions that we have. We're doing new construction, and all the new construction is mandated to be passive house. But we're a really young organization, and it's just going to take us a little while to hit the ground at that rate.
You have no requirement under your current structure that any acquisitions have to be passive house or have to meet any kind of objectives around good community design or anything like that.
Just recommendations at this point. There are no requirements.
Okay. And then just as I just wanted to second Rebecca's comment around kind of concern around or curiosity around how you were supporting the operations of these buildings. You know, that it's fantastic that you're trying to serve lower income households, but those households generally have a higher level of property management needs and kind of additional supports that they need to thrive. Just simply because they're one paycheck away from not being able to afford to pay their rent. And so would encourage you as you think through these building designs of how you're providing like on-site services and supportive services to your residents, particularly the lower income residents in your buildings. And I'm sure you guys have thought about it, but it's a issue that's front of mind right now for the affordable housing industry simply because we've run out of money to be able to fund these ongoing supports in the buildings. And so it's important that as we think about new models, we're thinking about the buildings as long-term infrastructure that has long-term operating needs, and that we need to capitalize those up front along with the capital cost to build a building, so that we're future-proofing any sort of challenges that we might face in terms of being able to operate the building and support the residents in it over time.
Yeah, there's a resident liaison on staff that will be interacting with residents as well. There's a disability justice component, there's a renters justice component associated with our model as well, so that, you know, when residents do endure, you know, periods of stress, there's methods of kind of fixing that or helping it along. We're not viewing ourselves as a service provider per se, like you would find in like an affordable housing or permanent supportive housing project. We do realize that there will be some needs around that. There have been conversations around it, but it's not been anything I've, you know, been in the room for. So we are thinking about it.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Rebecca, to you again.
Yes, me again. Something that Michaela said, maybe think of this, which is it's interesting having these kind of this two-pronged approach of acquisitions and new construction. So I'm wondering if the developer and board has done any strategizing work on which product types you're hoping to deliver with either of those. To me, it feels like with the social housing developers kind of special powers, it would be great to see them deliver units that the market's not delivering, right? Like the missing middle, large family size units, because it has the ability to kind of cut across the regular headwinds of development. So has there been discussion on who are we trying to serve with acquisitions versus new construction? What is the scale that we're trying to do with new construction? 3 projects a year is a lot. And so I'm thinking about that scale as well. Thinking those probably would be smaller footprint, some of those single stairs. So how is that kind of long-term planning looking like about the kinds of portfolio that you'll be both acquiring and building over the next 10 years or so?
Yeah, let me go back to the slide with our kind of production goals.
Yeah.
So the majority of the acquisitions that we've looked at and that we're going to get are going to be primarily studios and 1-bedrooms with a couple of 2s at the corners. We've only come across a handful of buildings that even have 3 bedrooms in the year or so that we've been looking at existing projects. And so to balance that out across our whole ecosystem, that's why we're really leaning into like the larger units for our new construction projects, so that there is a better balance among our whole portfolio. In terms of the scale of the projects, it's going to be everything from, I think 20 units is probably about the smallest that will go. But you put 2 single stair buildings together on the same lot, and that's 40. So it's a decent sized building. The largest that we're looking at is a phase project that would be about 200 units in 2 to 3 different buildings. Large social housing projects aren't typical in most of Europe. My experience around social housing is that it's generally between like 20 and 60 units. On buildings with a much greater unit count than that, I think you lose a lot of the community connectivity, the cohesion in projects like that. There's just a lot of don't know as many people because you only have the capacity to know a certain number of people. And so I think that our acquisitions are large, like 150 is going to be a small acquisition for most of the projects that we're looking to acquire. That's just the status quo of development in Seattle, right? Like small and medium-sized buildings just don't pencil anymore unless they're all CDUs. And so the buildings that we're building are not going to be a 500 unit mid-rise building. We're going to be doing smaller buildings distributed in more of the city. And yeah, I think we're trying to figure out, like, is there a prototype that we do in certain like neighborhoods or urban villages versus neighborhood centers versus like former single family zones. So maybe that gets into like the transects of the Congress for New Urbanism or something. But I think that we'll be looking at a broad range and over the first few years trying to figure out where A, we're most effective, and B, how we can kind of distribute those units in more of the places that people would like to live.
Thanks. Yeah, I will just reiterate for the record that I think it's as an organization that's not as beholden to lowering those per unit costs, right? Like, it would be great to see, I know you know this, but again, just saying it for the record, want to see those big multi-bedroom units in those livable spaces. So use your special powers for good. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we have about 15 minutes left. We have Dylan, Margaret, then I'm on the list, and then Andy. So let's try and keep our comments short so we can get to everybody. Dylan.
Mike, thanks for the presentation. It's very excited to see this kind of get off the ground. Very excited to continue to follow it, and appreciate the ambitions to kind of change the standard sort of multifamily building type in Seattle. And use this as an opportunity. Excited to see where it goes. Rebecca got some of my questions, but was curious. So I'm not hearing anything about parking, which sounds great. So it's just like off the table. It's not even something you guys are considering. Is that true?
No, so I did have a slide on that. It's funny. The parking has been like the most contentious discussion topic that we've had. There were several board members and myself who were like, we don't need parking. And there were other board members who were like, look, people who live in affordable housing, they have kids, they have jobs that aren't near transit, they need to be able to get around. And so where we're trying to end up is a place that's relatively flexible. We're not mandating any number. We're not saying no parking. There may be parking. There are opportunities to reduce the amount of parking that we develop. It'll also be a little bit site specific. Like if we're doing, a 12 or 16 plex in a single family zone, right? Like maybe there's like a shared car or something. Like there's just not room on a small lot like that to build parking. And so it's definitely been a fascinating debate, a hot button debate in our organization, as I guess, in most other organizations.
Got it. I saw this slide and I heard parking, but I immediately saw bikes. And so I figured you were talking, my mind just went to bike parking. I was like, oh, they're skipping parking altogether and just talking bike parking. That's great. Okay, cool. That's just our reality, but that's good feedback. And then a second question. I was curious on kind of the size of the buildings, and you talked about that with Rebecca already, but you're talking about these sort of European models, single stair buildings, single corridor buildings, stuff that we don't see as much of in Seattle. And just curious, and maybe you can follow up, but are there great examples of the type of building that you're looking to see kind of create in Seattle? This sort of building configuration that's like one of the ideal model. And would love to see a couple examples of those.
Yeah, I can send you some examples. Swiss co-ops love the single stair and the single loaded corridor. Was it Piotac did a single loaded corridor building at Yesler Terrace as well. And if I remember correctly, it has duplex units, and so the corridors aren't every floor; it's like every other floor for a portion of it.
Yeah, familiar.
Yeah. So there is, and Public 47 has a really nice single loaded corridor building right next to the Kaiser. It's next to the Anhalt building on Capitol Hill. So there is kind of some context for it. On the single stair, we really haven't had the opportunity to show what that could look like in a more European approach to it. And it's one of the things that I'm hoping that we're able to do with some of our projects. That I lived in a single stair fourplex And all of the units were 2-story units. When we were last in Germany, we had daylight on 3 sides. Our kitchen, living, dining were on one floor, and the bedrooms were on another. And it lived like being in a house without being in a house. And our rent was ridiculously affordable. And so I've lived in these kinds of buildings. I know the advantages compared to kind of our status quo, and I'm hoping that we have the opportunity to really demonstrate that it's just not just a better way of living, but I think that we can build for similar costs, right? We're going to get a much better product. So,
Right, very excited to follow.
Great, Margaret.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. I just have 2 quick questions and I'm going to jump them together. Do you have, and I'm thinking of the map with the 7 districts, the colorful map you shared earlier. Do you have a strategy for prioritizing which of the districts to develop in, or is it more opportunity based? And then my second question was, how do people actually become aware of the lottery system and find out about upcoming deadlines or vacancies?
yeah, so we the kind of first amount or the first like branch tranche of projects that came to us was from an RFI for stalled projects or existing buildings that was published last November. From that, actually, several of these first projects, which are kind of distributed throughout the city, came to us through that. A lot of the stalled deals that we looked at were primarily CDU buildings or largely studio or windowless 1-bedrooms that it's just really difficult for us to get like a 2 or a 3-bedroom unit out of something like that with like a 35, 40-foot deep floor plate. You have to add like so many more units to make it a 3-bedroom, and then it's huge and expensive, and the quality isn't that great. And so it opened the door for lots of these land opportunities. We've had people bringing projects around as well. I would say most of the projects that we've looked at have been in D1, D2, D3. We're trying to find more properties in D4, D5, D6, and D7 just to balance it out. It's the Wallingfords and the Fremonts and the Ballards have been more difficult to figure out for some reason. There's just so many more opportunities. Surprise in D2 and D3 where there's just a lot more land that's zoned for dense multifamily housing. But our goal is to be in every neighborhood. We're not going to be just in one area. We've had really good conversations with the Office of Housing about how to better coordinate once their new affordable housing location strategy comes out later this year as well. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Let's see. Margaret, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. Let's see. So I have a moment here. How are you guys visualizing leveraging the new, let's say, neighborhood centers and the corridors, and maybe address those two new place types independently?
Yeah, I think the neighborhood centers are really intriguing to us. I think the larger problem that we'll run into is there aren't a lot of larger parcels in some of these neighborhood centers that would make like if we could do an 8-story development, we'd have to like bundle together lots of, separately owned parcels to do something like that. So it does make it a little bit harder, but then again, that also allows us to lean more into the kind of 4, 5, 6-story single stair development and those typologies. We're really going to be focused on being kind of connected to transit, being in walkable areas. And so I think I love the neighborhood centers. I live in Upper Fremont. I think this is the whole city outside of like the urban villages should be like this is my opinion, maybe a little bit denser. I think they're really great opportunities. The corridors, if the city looks to expand the corridors more than 100 feet off of arterials and truck routes, I absolutely love it. Like I said, our board and staff were not thrilled about, being on a major truck route for potential projects after doing a site tour around several. And then, we're really interested in the city of Vancouver has a new social housing policy that they're adopting that would allow social housing developers to build, it's like 6 stories in low rise and single family neighborhoods and up to 12 or 18 outside of that. Outright. And so, one of the things that I would like to do with the city of Seattle, either comp plan or outside of that, is like roots to roofs or some other legislation where affordable housing developers and PDAs have just, if we're buying land because we're competing against the market, we have like more development capacity than the market would have, so that when we do larger units, right, our per unit count or cost ends up being the same, but we're, delivering larger and better units.
Great, thank you. Andy.
Yeah, quick, you mentioned there's not a lot of public land, which is not real surprising, and some of that is parkland. Discovery Park and Magnuson, I think both have some affordable housing, but parkland is precious. So longer term, do you see using a little more parkland, or that's going to be fought tooth and nail because parkland needs to be preserved?
Yeah, I think with I-9, the initiative was it 9? We can't take away parkland for housing, and I would say there's not enough parkland in the city as it is. So I don't want to consume parks for housing, but I think there are definitely opportunities over community centers or libraries or post offices, right? Like those might be going away soon, or maybe we don't have as many as we have right now. So I think there are lots of opportunities around those kinds of public projects. We did reach out to Office of Housing about the Discovery Park. What is that, Fort Lawton? And I've been involved in the organizing and debates around Fort Lawton for over a decade. In my opinion, that should have been like 3,000 homes instead of 500. Unfortunately, their model there, the city's model there, is all affordable homeownership, and so it's not really our space currently. So we're not working on that project. But my assumption is there'll be other opportunities that come up, especially if light rail gets expanded to Ballard and West Seattle.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's see. I just wanted to circle back to Margaret's question about like how people find out about the lottery and apply for units.
Yeah, so moving forward, we'll have better policies around this. We only had a 2-week window. We did not expect 10,200 plus people to apply in the 2 weeks that it was open. We are still trying to figure out, I guess, what our long-term policy is around this. And so I would say we'll get back to you is probably the best approach. But we had staff and board members who were out at community centers, out at farmers markets, daycare facilities, engaging with the public, and a ton of social media, press reports, interviews as well. I have a feeling that the need is not going to be going down, and so we'll how we can scale up to build 10,000 homes in a matter of years is that's not something that we're able to do, but it's definitely something that we need to be thinking about how we get a broader reach and get that information out there while we're building those homes.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Any last comments? Short.
I'm not seeing any, Matt, in the room.
Okay, great.
Or in the chat.
Well, then I'm going to use my prerogative to say congratulations. I think this has been, 4 or 5, and for you, maybe a 10-year quest, 15-year quest to move this from just almost a romantic ideal to a real actionable program. And so I'm super excited for the future. I'm super excited for Seattle to have this innovative model to build on and to propagate to other municipalities. So thank you very much for all your effort, and thanks for coming in today.
Thanks, Matt. It's a labor of love for sure, and we look forward to bringing more information to you guys hopefully soon.
Great, thanks. Okay.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. So on to our next session here, which is the future independent work of the Seattle Planning Commission. Today we also want to add just kind of a preliminary overview of independent work that the commission, we've discussed in the past or over the last few months. And let's see. And so staff is going to facilitate this discussion. We've got 45 minutes. And so let's chart some future here.
Thank you, Matt. So I sent you all, commissioners, an email last Friday around 1:35. If you want to go back through your inbox and find it, just providing a very brief overview of an idea of some independent work that the commission might take on over the next number of months that has been discussed in various committees, including the executive committee, touched on perhaps at housing and neighborhoods. It's come up in different conversations, and we've not taken it any further, in part of trying to be really responsive to the ever evolving legislative schedule for the implementation work around the comprehensive plan. So we haven't wanted to dedicate too much time to pursuing this and then have to put it down in order to scramble and review legislation. Right now, that work, there is a public hearing on the 22nd of June on the companion resolution that City Council proposed to be a companion to the Centers and Corridors legislation. And then there is another public hearing on July 23rd. It's the 23rd or the 27th. I can't remember which, but mid to late July on any amendments that council members may be proposing to that Centers and Corridors legislation. We have not seen those amendments. They will be made public 30 days in advance of the public hearing. So we do have a little bit of breathing room, also wanting to squeeze as much as we can out of Matt in his remaining days serving on the commission. Next slide, please. So a specific piece of work that we've talked about that I wanted to bring to the attention of the full commission and get all of your perspective and ideas and responses is a fairly narrow scope of work that where the purpose would be to visualize denser residential streets with right-of-way improvements that would facilitate active transportation options and promote healthier, greener streets. This the timing is intentional to have had Mike Eliason speak to us before we had this conversation. Our audience, the proposed audience, is the mayor's office and related departments as they develop implementation legislation for the One Seattle plan following completion of the SEIS, which we anticipate will be the very end of this year, early next year. City Council, as they deliberate that legislation, and constituents of both the mayor and City Council as an educational piece meant to help visually inform community members. One of the points that Mike made in his presentation before this conversation was that one of the barriers that he sees in implementing social housing developments is getting over that neighborhood response to higher heights. And I think that paired with an understanding of what are the trade-offs of those higher heights. And if you can get higher heights with more greenery and more livable and bigger units for families and whatnot. So this is something, again, that has come up in committee meetings. And so what I wanted to use the time that we have today to discuss is to get a general response from you all. Does this sound like a piece of work that you all want to take on? Again, the time frame would be developing it over the summer and finalizing it in the fall, so as to inform those conversations that are going to happen at the end of the year, beginning of next. To start getting some clarity around the scope. So I think based on my experience working, staffing, having the pleasure of staffing the commission over the last over a decade, when doing independent work getting a real good handle on the scope is very important. Because as the scope evolves, the timeline to complete the work tends to get extended, and there's the potential of missing the opportunity to actually get done what we want to get done, which is really highlighting work, highlighting trade-offs that there might be, and really putting out an educational piece that can inform both elected officials as well as constituents. There have been some talk of case studies, so we may not get to have that conversation today, but it would be helpful to be able to reference a couple of other cities that you all have at the top of your head that are great examples of what that higher density looks like, that is off an arterial, but not into the heart of neighborhood residential areas. And then start brainstorming, given if there's agreement that this is something you all want to pursue, to start talking about what kinds of visualizations you all want to develop. And also, I'm the one who puts on my super pragmatic hat, and I will be the one who will always refer back to scope and really wanting to put together a concise and cogent piece of work that is clear in what it's trying to accomplish and is a reasonable scope to accomplish within a time frame that is timely to our audience. So with that, I will open it up. Would love to hear reactions from commissioners on the call and in the room. Just an initial sort of thumbs up, thumbs down. Does this sound like a good use of all of your time when we're not working on comp plan implementation or other work? I will also note that at next week's Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting, we will be getting a presentation from staff from the Seattle Department of Transportation on the update to their Streets Illustrated Guide, which is another word for the right-of-way improvement manual. And I think that work will be very timely to inform this work, if this is work you all feel like you would like to pursue. So as for people who may not be familiar with it, the Streets Illustrated Guide actually is very graphic in nature and gives examples of different street types across the city. And the update that SDOT is just undertaking right now, beginning, is meant to align with the comprehensive plan, the One Seattle plan. And so this is both a great opportunity for the Planning Commission, to be making those connections between the One Seattle plan and what it looks like literally on the ground, no pun intended, as well as to inform future work if that's something that you all feel like you would like to do. And now I will stop talking and ask for basic reactions. Andy's got his hand up.
I got stopped by the word visualize, and whether that is finding existing examples and drawings versus, I'm not sure what the drawing skills of this, I don't have any, but within this, the architects and everybody here have those skills, whether you have in mind that they would be drawing some or finding good examples from, as you said, there's one document there, I can at least one other that was full of visualizations that sort of pick good ones from what other people have done. Is that what you have in mind, or do you mean actually drawings?
I think what I've heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but a combination thereof. So we do have some very talented architects on staff who in their free time may be able to develop some visualizations before doing that, before taking their time to put pen to paper. I think we want to have a pretty good sense of what it is we do want to produce ourselves versus what we want to reference as photographs of case studies versus what existing work, either produced by hand or by computer, is out there that you all feel is really compelling. So I would say a combination. And again, I'm just going to be the scope master. A combination, but keeping it tight, keeping it concise, keeping it cogent, so that it is not a tome of word for somebody to go through.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correct, I think it was out of Portland, it was a whole book of just the kind of things you're talking about, but it's not, I think I know where I can find it. But those things do exist if people want visual stuff, so.
Please do send that if you can find it. Thank you. Matt, I'm just gonna let you know Dylan is in the queue and then I'll get back on texting as I see more.
Okay. All right. Well,
So we have a
Dylan,
lot of- Thank you, guys. It's a team effort. Yeah, just in like the case studies, I think relate directly to visualizations. I mean, the hope would be that we could, find examples. We're not, I don't believe reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to bring these ideas more to Seattle that exist out in the world in other places. But yeah, if we do need to get into specifics, visualizations could be something we can look into. A couple like initial things. I think this is a great idea. I'm excited to dig into this. And initial, like just immediate thoughts. I'm still kind of thinking through, but just like the Barcelona super blocks is something I want to dig into and understand more of. Basically taking kind of 9 square blocks in Barcelona. They're working on doing this kind of throughout the city, lots of locations, but taking existing urban fabric, existing relatively dense urban fabric, and applying change to the right of way to basically take back space from cars and give it back to people in various forms. I don't have intimate knowledge of it. I just know it exists and it's something I've been excited about for a long time. And so I would consider that potentially as one case study to get some ideas for the type of things that we'd like to see here. And then the second thing to link it back to what we're doing in Seattle already is these slow streets, the mouthful, the Seattle Stay Healthy streets that were created during COVID, which are basically just, streets we see around Seattle where they put up these sort of temporary signs that have continued to exist for 5, 6, 7 years, and have kind of these sort of half measures to close these down to cars. And I think it's, I'd really like to continue to push on those, to use those, and for those to not just kind of fall by the wayside and get forgotten about. And so I think what the work and the effort that's been done on Stay on these streets is something that we should highlight. And also just look into kind of what the ambitions are with Stay Healthy Streets, what the intents are. And there's a lot of, good infrastructure that's starting to be put into place to support those. It's just, there hasn't been a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of ideas there, but not a lot has necessarily been done to make more permanent installations there. But I would just say that's, something that Seattle is starting to do and we can kind of lean into, but to just emphasize should be done much more.
Michaela?
Yes, I love this idea. I'm actually very excited about this idea, so strong thumbs up for me. And I'll just say that I think that the commission missed an opportunity to help inform the initial preliminary debate around the comprehensive plan and this perceived tension between, growth, density, affordability, and trees. And so this presents a real opportunity for us to paint a picture of a future Seattle where all of these things can coexist. And that can actually create like beautiful, wonderful spaces, healthy spaces, cool spaces, spaces with birds. Like I just think this is a good strategy for us. And would encourage that we make sure that we have examples from the US context and not just international. Because I think oftentimes that can be easily dismissed out of hand as, oh, well, we're not Europe, so that's not a real possibility here. With that said, I know Deanna, I'm channeling Deanna a little bit, and she's also several times brought up Paris. And so if we're looking for an international example, I may want to look there as well. And then I also want to make sure that one of our visualizations or part of the scope that we show doesn't just show all new construction, because I think part of the reality of how this is going to play out is this is going to be infill and, you know, new development over time next to existing homes. And so I think telling that, being honest about that story, but also I think it can also help communicate that you do make these changes to the streetscape or something over time. And it doesn't all happen at once. Your neighborhood is in a construction zone for years on end. Anyway, I rest my case. Love this idea. Totally supported it. Like really excited to work on it.
Okay, let's see. So, a couple things. One, I know that the Seattle Parks Foundation has been thinking about this with regards to our inability to add open space in general, and so knitting together the idea of of our incomplete Olmsted legacy, the streetcar network that has been abandoned, all those wide boulevards that aren't that may have been we may have paved over, or they might be like Beacon Hill or like Beacon that has a green median, and thinking about Vision Zero and dealing with our arterials like Aurora and MLK. I think there's a possibility of thinking about this as a really restorative project where we're using these to really knit together, add green space, provide safety, and do this kind of urban design thinking. And so I'm looking, I've been thinking about this map, like Beacon Avenue, 35th in the south end, 23rd, Aurora. Some of these things, there are already elements that people have been thinking of in how to change the nature of these arterials. And so I think it's knitting together the vision beyond that, and making kind of a cohesive, or maybe I don't think we have to fill in all the blanks, but I think if we're I think there's lots of allies out there who are interested in this exact same thing, but haven't really coalesced around what it means. So I'm very excited, but sad. I'm not going to necessarily be here for all of it, but hopefully I can help out a little bit. Because I do think that there's one is yes, pulling together examples. The other is collaging all these great ideas that other allied organizations are already working on, and integrating it with Vision Zero, and integrating it with the new sort of Streets Illustrated, and knitting it together with the urban centers as potentially super blocks and all these sorts of things. It's really exciting, exciting forward-thinking vision for the city. And if it really does come down to having, if we can draw a green network, that's overlaid, that's based maybe on the old streetcar map, overlaid on the Olmsted map, overlaid on our greenways map, and where our parks are and schools are, it'd be a really powerful idea. So I'm really excited about this.
Thank you, Matt, and you're always welcome back.
I do really want to leave. So it's a problem that I'm so excited about the work that's going to happen after I leave. Anyway, let's see, Cecilia.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I was also thinking about this was a great opportunity to kind of reframe the tree perspective, and really excited to hone in on visualizing what public tree space could be. And then really thinking about what Dylan said. This might be out of the scope, but just I've been thinking about sidewalks constantly. And knowing that there are so many neighborhoods, and especially North Seattle, also South Seattle, that we are just not going to build we just don't have money to start building like full sidewalks, and really thinking about like how we can use like home zones and in the like people streets neighborhoods and create a safe street that show like another example of how we're creating a safe street, even if we don't have billions and billions of dollars right now to build all like sidewalks with the drains and everything like that. So might add another layer to this, might be, but anyways, I think that'd be a great opportunity. And this is an example of just like street trees. I know that there's no upzoning, there's not denser building around it, and I also have not been a pedestrian on the sidewalks, so have not fully vetted. But I just think like Ravenna, as you drive east on Ravenna, that is like the most beautiful street ever because of like all of the trees in the median. And so I just think it's one amazing example of just like, at least to show that like we do have examples in Seattle of how we're using street trees to like really change the feel of the arterial or non-arterial. But anyways, that's just like an example that I love in Seattle because it's like the most beautiful street.
Thank you. Zio.
I said there are two like examples that are sort of coming out of a personal interest that I think might be useful and might places that we could pull case studies from. One is, this doesn't fit Michaela's like these places in the US, but Vancouver's been doing a bunch of family-oriented urbanism work for like
Cascadia.
decades now, kind of. And so there's lots of built work in the city coming out of those initiatives at a variety of like different levels of density. But the like Falls Creek development, which is the former Olympic Village in particular, has been a topic of like places where families have been able to sort of locate themselves over the entire sort of lifetime of their use in the city and have been able to remain in a city in a specific development even over time. So that seems like a neighbor and a similar, geography at least. And then the other is in Detroit, they did a youth-centric neighborhood plan for the Cody Rouge Warrendale neighborhood, and that project looks at like how youth think about the variety of street types and typologies of places that they're interested in navigating to and things like that. And I think there's a lot of really interesting youth-led examples of how streets that are not necessarily arterials are used and connect them to different places in the neighborhood. And I think that feels like part of the spirit of the Stay Healthy Streets, but also is just like a really interesting body of work to leverage as we think about what like these kind of denser residential streets outside of centers could look like. So both of those are sort of older projects, but maybe in that there's like some sort of long-ranging view on them that could be useful.
I should know, but you repeating.
I could just, I'll put them in the.
Like I should know, but I don't.
No.
Okay. Rebecca?
Oh, sure. I was like, I don't need to say.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, I deleted my name. So I was like, I don't need to say. I'll just say. I will just say I think it's possible also to use. I agree with it's all from Europe. People are gonna be like, oh, of course, Europe's like always better at urbanism than we are. Like it's not feasible. But I think it would be like we probably can find examples from Seattle that are like getting close to what we would like to see, even if it's the beginnings of it. I'm thinking of these rows of townhomes, for instance, that have shared backyard space, kind of like the double loaded corridor of townhomes, between an alley and a street. Like that's a really good starting place. Maybe that floor plate could be a little wider. What kind of density do we want to see? But like we're moving in the right direction with these developments that are foregrounding, open space that is not blocked off by giant fences, that is shared, that is green, that is preserving trees. I also really like the idea of like rethinking and reframing the trees situation as it interacts with sidewalks and right of way, where you're able to have density in residential areas that can be really welcoming. It's just a matter of how all of these elements are interacting that makes them either welcoming or not welcoming, accessible or not accessible. I'm really excited about sidewalk talk. Love sidewalk talk. Would love to do more sidewalk talk. So those were initial thoughts. I think it's a really good idea. I think it'd be really fun. I have no visualization skills, so I will be relying 100% on the architects in the room. Thank you very much.
They said yes. I'm trying to make eye contact with them, and they have not.
We've been emphasizing the importance of case studies.
Any other thoughts
Okay.
from folks who are on that? Sorry, Matt, jumping the gun here.
Oh, I was just going to say the same thing.
Okay. On the same wavelength.
I guess, well, I didn't put my hand up. Can't raise my hand. A
Dylan
quick
has his hand
one.
raised.
I think just based on kind of what Rebecca was saying, there's an importance to also just, there's certain places in the city, like Rebecca was getting at with the townhouses, where the urban fabric just feels right, it feels good, it has these aspects. And I think, like Mike Eliason was pointing out, the area in North Fremont, South 46, down towards the Cafe Vita down there, it's been a low-rise zone for a long time. And so there's been a couple decades, 15 years for development to happen there that is of, a really comfortable scale. It's dense, but there's still open space. And so I think I'm thinking of these areas in the city, North Fremont area being one of them, along Madison, MLK being another one, where there's another one of these low-rise zones. And so I would just, as folks are moving around the city in the next couple of weeks, keep an eye out for these low-rise zones, keep an eye out for what you're seeing. And I think it's definitely worthwhile for us just to be intentional about observing what we see in these areas. Because, I think there's something to learn from, again, like Rebecca's saying, the little things that Seattle is doing goes a long way to kind of learn from what we currently are appreciating in city. Also another one, Union Street, just south of Union, 16th, 17th, 18th, south of Union and Capitol Hill, another area where we have a lot of older apartment buildings where there's still a lot of open space. There's been a lot of opportunity for trees to develop around existing density. So just observing what it is that we like about these neighborhoods, and we'd like to be able to kind of try to codify or put into policy around these corridors to see more of. That's it.
Yeah, I could see, just building on that, if we could use really Seattle specific examples of, maybe some of these unicorn, not necessarily unicorn, but these public, or these spaces that happen to really just hit all the right notes, but that are homegrown, and then figure out how to apply those so that there's sort of a systematic extension to places that don't have that texture, don't have that pattern, 35th in West Seattle, that is is essentially a highway. You're traveling at 50 miles an hour past houses, and I would really, I'd love to document all that stuff and then extend it or figure out how to apply it back to make this idea of the corridors actually, take it from being a skeleton to really a real desirable pattern that is going to help to sell this idea and expand this idea, make it palatable for city council to extend it to where it's actually effective.
Thanks, Matt.
Andy, you're up.
Yeah, real quick, I just sent to Vanessa, there's a website called rethinkingstreets.com. It's by Mark Schlossberg, University of Oregon, and he has 3 different books out on rethinking streets with case studies and some very good visualizations. I think I have a physical copy of one of them, but I think they're downloadable for free, and it'd be worth looking through that website, rethinkingstreets.com.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we still have a, let's see, we still have some time if we want to talk some more.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So is this intended to be focused on forming just the corridors, like going denser off of the main arterials on our corridor strategy? Or is this something or that we're looking to be more broadly applicable to both like neighborhood centers and other typologies as well, and like along the arterial?
I think that is a question for this group.
Okay.
And I, once again, would just say the broader the scope, the more time it's going to take to develop.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying, no, we can't do that. I think my recollection of conversations we've had today about this has been really focusing on that denser residential density that is greater, but not necessarily, not at all on the arterial, but off the arterial.
Yeah.
That said, though, I've heard today, Matt had the idea of, overlaying these various maps in Seattle, the Olmsted, the Stay Healthy Streets, the Green Streets. So I don't think we're restricted to that, to only off corridor, higher density than neighborhood residential.
Mm-hmm.
What I was going to suggest what I was going to suggest and offer is that following today, staff will take all the comments that we heard today and send it back out. We're next going to discuss this at next week's executive committee. And if you can't make the executive committee, send in your thoughts. I'm hearing there's some people I haven't heard from on the call, but I'm hearing in general those who've spoken up are enthusiastic. So I'd like to harness the enthusiasm and start putting some meat on the bones, so to speak. And I think the first step is really honing in on the scope. And I'm talking over the chair. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just, I have my hand raised for after you finish, that's all, because I can't see anybody. I just, Michaela, the way that I think about this is that we started with the urban villages, now we have the neighborhood centers, but what we really need is to stitch them together into a network of centers where it's really easy to get, we talk about like having a polycentric city. And like, to me, this is how we get there. We don't have a vision for that really yet. And so really being able to see like after this, like how all the neighborhoods work together and that it really is much more of a cohesive fabric. So I guess that's how I kind of think about it. So it's not so much, it's like both the corridors, it's the adjacencies to the corridors, it's the park system or the parks, the rights of way, and also integrating the neighborhood centers. That's probably like too big, eh?
So I'll just say in response, I'm a fan of seizing the moment and not missing the moment. And so I just want to make sure that we keep it sized to something that we can finish without time in a shorter time frame. But I love your vision. I'm totally on board with that. I remember those conversations. I'm going to drop another suggestion for another layer that we think about, which is outside citywide data layer, which does some mapping already of where we have different types of public open space. And I was thinking through this kind of like building the case for going deeper into neighborhoods off of the corridors. And so would love for one of the examples to sort of be like, what is the pedestrian experience? What is the streetscape experience and transect coming? If you're going to get off of a bus, like, let's say you get off of a bus on a frequent transit line and you're walking the 5 blocks into your new like multifamily building that you live in this great neighborhood. And maybe you're across the street from a park or a school. I would just sort of love to see it paint that picture of what that connectivity looks like, what that density looks and feels like for one of the examples if possible. But if we can find a way to right size a broader scope that is about the connectivity between neighborhoods, I'm all for that as well. But as long as we get it done by fall.
Just one piece. I'm stuck a little between visualizations. This looks great, and translate that to something as they work on legislation or turn that into something they could use. So the pretty picture needs to be turned into something that becomes rules, guidelines, or just whatever it is. Pretty pictures alone are
What's getting translated this fall?
Man, how do you translate that as really?
Yeah, so the centers and corridors legislation is out there. It's transmitted. We provided a comment letter on that. No visualizations, just comments. My understanding is nothing is being transmitted this fall. But I can follow up with you there. The SCIS is either going to be available for comment at the end of this year or beginning of next year. So my understanding is what the next phase of work after the centers and corridors legislation is passed, hopefully before budget, will be that next level of comp plan implementation that was meant to be done originally in phase 3 and 4, and now is going to be in one big phase.
Yeah.
So I feel like the commission will still provide comment on the policy and legislation and code that it will be proposed and transmitted. My idea about this piece was really not in the weeds on code and policy, and really more as a tool for elected officials and their constituents to start seeing what it looks like when you take these codes, because there is, I've sensed, and other people have noted it, that there has been a fair amount of misinformation about what the urban design implications will be of this denser legislation, some of which, is required by state law now, the middle missing housing. And so presenting some examples in Seattle, I like the fact that a lot of people have brought that up today. Examples elsewhere, but really to take the fear out of, no, we're not going to have brutalist buildings throughout our gorgeous green Emerald City.
Yeah. Tree Action Seattle has an awesome diagram that it's just like, here's what our neighborhood looks like today, and it's leafy and all that, and then here's what it is under the new tree code, and it's just like 100% building, like in a way that is not physically possible. So yes, the misrepresentations are out there a little bit. Okay. Let's see. Any other comments?
Dylan.
I had a comment.
Dylan.
Just as we're
so close.
I know. I put my name in there. It was in there.
Oh, I didn't even see it. I'm sorry.
But yeah, just on like the scope and scoping this. I mean, I think that kind of your point, Matt, is not so much expanding the scope, but it's focusing in on it is focusing on the connection between. It's focusing on these arterials that are connecting, where there has been a lot of effort and a lot of work already. And these corridors have there hasn't been that same sort of level of effort and level of work to understand what they're going to be. I do also want us to keep in mind with this idea of transect, like as we kind of continue to be reminded by OECD, we're basically at 4 stories throughout the city now at this point. And on corridors, what's being proposed with LR3 is currently at 5 stories. So there's not much of a transept. It's pretty similar heights. But But what happens kind of on those streets on the ground level? What happens to the existing roads? What happens to the existing sidewalks? You know, there's a lot there that is just kind of hasn't really been discussed. And I'm excited to see this updated SDOT Streets Illustrated. I think that'll start to get at some of those ideas. But I do think we should be really intentional about trying to keep this as focused as we can. You know, we're trying to apply this to an entire network throughout the city, but we're trying to come up with specific sort of examples of what individual instances of that network may look like. And I do think it's important we try to keep our focus narrow with the understanding that it can be applied to an entire network that's being developed under the comp plan, which is these corridors. So I just wanted to make that point. That's it.
Okay. Good deal. Anyone else on the list in the chat?
Nope. I'm looking around and looking at the chat. I see nobody else.
Okay. Any last comments? Otherwise, or I should say, any last comments? Okay. With that, I'm going to adjourn the June 11th, 2026 meeting of the Seattle Planning Commission. Thank you all, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.